James Joyce was, surprise surprise, another Irish writer. He was a very influential modernist writer, experimenting with form and style. Joyce wrote many works that practically perfected the stream of consciousness technique. Here are some of his more well-known works. Today we will be focusing on his book, A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. Knowing that, let's look at some relevant information regarding Joyce's actual life. Like Stephen, the protagonist of Portrait, James Joyce began his education at a Jesuit boarding school in 1888, but had to leave in 1892 when his family was going through financial trouble. Joyce then studied at home before he was offered a place in the Jesuits' Dublin school, Belvedere College, in 1893. Joyce grew up in a Catholic family, but left Catholicism. Now let's look at some of the major themes in A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. First off, as a warning, this book is not the easiest to read. The way it is written is very stream of consciousness, meaning you are in Stephen's head the whole time. We grow up with him. The first line of the book is "Once upon a time," telling us one of the first things that Stephen actually registers in his mind. He is listening to a story, and everything gets very jumbled. But as he gets older, his thoughts grow more complex. You have to look for details and extrapolate. He'll drop in references to things that are actually really important, but it's easy to miss, so read carefully. While reading this book, one of the first things to look for is the constant theme of identity. This could be the changing identity of Stephen as he grows from a child to an adult, more like an angsty teen, but he's on his way to adulthood. He becomes more intelligent and sophisticated, but at times he loses himself and confidence in himself and becomes like a child again. Who is he? Is he an adult? Is he a teenager? Is he a child? Where does he belong? In the middle of the book, when there is the Hellfire sermon, Stephen regresses back to childhood and falls back on his childhood faith. This childhood or adulthood identity theme is closely tied with the theme of religious versus atheistic. His religion is very childlike, whereas his atheism is portrayed as being more intelligent and freeing. He is constantly trying to figure out who he is. Religious, atheist, child, adult, poet, priest. Another big theme in Portrait is Stephen's fascination with words. It starts when he's a child and creates a little ditty. His fascination with those rhyming words shows us the beginning of Stephen's fascination with poetry. When Stephen starts on his journey to become a priest, we see him begin to stifle his joy of words. His obsession with repressing any joy he might have intellectually or sensually causes him to lose his poetic narration style. But when Stephen leaves the religious order, he is able to once again find joy in words and poetry, fully realizing his potential as an artist. We can also see Stephen's senses of color, temperature, etc. evolve throughout the book. When he is a child, all of his senses are extreme. There is no in-between. It's either hot or cold. When he starts growing up, his descriptions start getting more complicated and poetic. But he also starts to discover some different types of senses. Specifically, he hits puberty and learns about the pleasures of sex. But he feels guilty and goes in the opposite direction and goes to the strictest order of being a priest. So even in his teenage years, Stephen still lives in extremes. He can only participate in his senses and sensual pleasures when he can have them all. And when he abstains from his senses, he mortifies himself so that he will not find enjoyment in any of them. When I say mortifies himself, I really mean it. He deprives himself from any possible pleasure, like not finding a comfortable position in bed or finding the sound he hates the most and listening to it. When he leaves the priesthood, he is able to reunite with his senses and people again. His sensitivity to beauty was not at all compatible with the rigid Catholicism that he was raised with. And he reinforces that Catholic strictness to an even greater degree than is necessary, which makes him dislike religion even more in the end. Despite his fears of damnation, he eventually chooses to become an artist, even if it will send him to hell. In Portrait, the familial home is a constant source of unhappiness and instability. This is true in regards to Ireland as a home country, and also in his familial home with his parents and siblings. Stephen wonders how connected one should be to his homeland, especially when that homeland is going through some cultural identity issues. His parents are constantly moving because of money troubles, and he doesn't register a feeling of love from anyone. This could be because this book is all in Stephen's head. It doesn't mean he isn't loved, it just means he doesn't recognize it. Or if he does, he doesn't think it's that important. Now for one of the more interesting themes in Portrait. Irish writing, dating all the way back to Irish mythological tales, women were used as muses for the poet or the Irish countryman. They were more symbolic than real people. This is also true for Stephen, a pseudo-artist poet. It starts early on with his childhood friend, Aline, who his family doesn't want him to play with because she is Protestant and they are Catholic. And then there is the girl from the train platform, Emma, who doesn't get much substance as a character of her own, but she becomes yet another muse in romanticization of women for Stephen. Then he does the same thing with the Virgin Mary, and then yet again with the bird girl on the beach. He views these women as unreachable, elevated, and pure. Again, just like with his senses and his views of the world, Stephen views women in extremes. For him, women are either pure and unreachable as Emma, or impure, sexual and common like the prostitutes he visits when he's at Belvedere. Those are some of the important themes that you could look for while reading A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. I hope this helped. I'll see you next time.